There are a lot of professionals that we work with, and it's always just kind of been understood, or an understood agreement, that it's okay if you take what I filmed for you and you use it as a sample of work, as the kind of videos that your company produces. Or if you wanted to use the video that I shot for you for some other purpose, it's okay because you paid me for it. And while that may not be what the law says, a lot of people in our industry kind of go along with that, and then there are those who don't go along with that. So how do you work around that?
So you touched on three different areas. The law isn't obnoxious, so if we have no signed writing and I pay you to do a video production for me, well, the law recognizes I have an implied license to use what you have created for the purposes that you know that I've hired you for.
Right.
An implied license. Now, if you want to, or if I want to use that as, on our website showing examples of work that we do, or for some other purpose, or let's say you assigned the copyright to me, but you want to show it on your website as examples of work as part of your portfolio, the law also recognizes what's called a fair use. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you use this video without the owner's permission, you copied it, so technically that's a copyright infringement, but we're going to say no harm, no foul, and there's factors that the courts look at. Were you using this for commercial purposes? Were you using this to make money? Were you taking away the market value? And that's really the biggest factor from me, the rights holder. Were you doing this for purposes of commentary, for education? And fair use is kind of gray. Commentators like to talk about it a lot. It doesn't get litigated as much as you would think. But that would be a classic example, I think, of a fair use argument. It's like, I'm not taking anything away from you. I'm just trying to show the type of work we do at our studio. I think there would be most likely a compelling, or at least a reasonable fair use argument that even though I didn't have an implied license to use it in my portfolio, there's no harm, no foul. This is fair. But people can often disagree on what's fair.
Right.
The last issue you brought up is, well, what if I want to use it apart from in a commercial context, right, from the original implied license? And that can become much more problematic. Now, you're right, in most areas of commerce, these type of disputes don't get litigated because the original author was paid for the work. And particularly if there's a custom of it's a like kind of usage, you just don't hear any exception, even if the subsequent use may have been outside of the implied license. So these disputes do not come up often, but they do come up. Where you'll find they come up most often is where you have a long-standing relationship and one person is contributing a lot of content without contributing the ownership to the other person of the content. And then the receiver fires the author, and then the receiver turns around and wants to keep using the content. Well, so long as the nature of that content use doesn't change, there's no problem because it's still within the scope of the original implied license. But what happens is you want to hire somebody else to replace me, the original author. That person comes in and he wants to modify that content. And one of the copyrights is a right to modify, to make derivative works of your own content. So as soon as the new person comes in and starts changing the original content, copyright violation, and now I'm scorned. This is a long-standing relationship, it might have been worth a lot of money, and then I send you the cease and desist letters. You can't modify my content, you can't repurpose it, you can't take those videos I did for your website and send them out to clients on an e-publication somewhere else. And you will see lawsuits there, but there usually has to be a lot of money involved, and they're the exception and not the norm.
So let's say that I shoot video for another videographer, and that videographer then, let's say it's of downtown Raleigh, right? And it was for a particular client originally when he hired me. He said, I need you to shoot some footage of downtown Raleigh. I'm gonna use it for this marketing video. Okay. I would not personally have a problem if he used that same footage for some other marketing commercial, or if he did something for downtown Raleigh, city of Raleigh, they wanted to use some of my footage. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But technically, that could be an issue.
That's actually an interesting hypothetical, because I think more and more artists, and particularly photographers, have learned how the law works, particularly in the digital age. On the one hand, the digital age has made it much easier to develop photographs and distribute them, and it certainly has made it much easier to copy. I go on the internet, right-click, copy, and now I have a copy of your photo. And a lot of photographers now, professional photographers, are developing their primary revenue stream not through their services, but through the licensing of their content. And your illustration or your example of downtown Raleigh is an interesting one, because there is a photographer who specializes, a local photographer who specializes in Raleigh skyline shots. Okay. And he's very aggressive. If his work shows up on somebody else's website, you'll get a letter from his attorney demanding a fee, a fairly hefty fee for the unauthorized use of his photograph on your website or otherwise. And what a lot of these photographers are doing is they're marketing their works on the internet, and they're putting digital markers in their photographs.
Right.
So when I come along the lazy website designer and say, oh, that'd be a cool image for my client's website, right-click, copy, paste on there. Well, I've just pasted the digital marker.
Right.
And when that shows up on a new website, the rights owner gets a notice from the software that says, hey, this digital marker showed up on a new website.
Right.
He checks his logs, and the license was paid, calls his attorney, and before you know it, you're in a bad situation. So what used to be customary is, I think, swinging the other way, particularly with commercial photography or any public use of photography.